All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
And hello, how loyal of all of you to be here on President's Day. I'm very excited. Yes.
Quick, everybody, go buy a mattress.
Go buy a mattress. There's no way that the founders of this great nation, the terrific presidents who've given so much, including their lives for this nation, in the case of Abe Lincoln, who is over my left shoulder, there's no greater honoring their memory than to buy something on sale today in America, everybody. It's the way we honor those who've made supreme sacrifices.
A car, a mattress, you know.
I know what you're saying. Mark and Kim and Tony, who's here.
Thanks, Tony.
They are working on President's Day.
Kim, how are you?
Not so much. I mean, we're working on shows for the rest of the week, but this we have recorded, we have curated, which is quasi-ding word, a best of show for you today. So what you will see today is some segments that were among our favorites, and you'll see them all in seconds. In fact, I will tell you that it will kind of run the gamut. Ahead, Tom Dreesen. He's the guy who opened for Frank Sinatra for so many years.
Oh,
and
such
he has
a good
stories
interview.
of,
Yes.
growing up in Chicago with the mob. Mm-hmm. It's pretty great. And we got so many requests for it that we added it to this best of show.
Nice.
And we also have a visit with my pal Bean, who's a multi-Marconi award-winning broadcaster, one half of Kevin and Bean. Mm-hmm. And I came up in radio with Bean. And it's so cool to visit with him. And because it is a while ago that we did it, it's sort of a throwback. Some of the stuff that we talk about, you'll get a kick out of, like the Gwyneth Paltrow trial. Do you remember the Gwyneth Paltrow trial? Yeah. So that's in there.
Guy tried to get money out of her because he smacked into her. Yeah.
And you had some good takes on it. So that'll be in there too. So there's a lot of stuff still ahead, and I think you're really going to enjoy the show. So there's that. Before I go any further, I wanted to mention there's a big thing going down with my boyfriend, Jimmy Garoppolo, Mr. Handsome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Raider. Now a Raider. Boo.
Now he's a Raider.
Yeah.
And what's happened with him is that he's getting suspended.
What happened?
This suspension is going to cost him money, too. He got suspended for performance-enhancing drugs, Kim.
Not Jimmy.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Feels great, baby.
Well, it does feel great, I guess. The exact nature, by the time this airs, like we're recording this for you, maybe we'll know specifically, but it's essentially a medication of some kind that was not cleared ahead of time with the league. It was a treatment of some kind, prescribed medication that he didn't let the league know about. But the reason it's particularly interesting and striking is that he's getting suspended for 2 games for violating the NFL's performance-enhancing substances policy, to this piece I'm reading. And Garoppolo will not appeal the suspension. He's going to miss the first 2 games of the 2024 season.
Shoot.
Sources said the Raiders are expecting to release Garoppolo before the 5th day of the new league year in mid-March.
He can't catch a break. I mean, the 49ers were trying to unload him. The Raiders are trying to unload him.
This one, though, listen to this. He would earn $11.25 million in a roster bonus were they to keep him on with the Raiders. But by releasing him, they dodged that a little bit. But he also has an $11.25 million base salary guarantee for the 2024 season that now could be voided because of this suspension.
What?
So they're looking likely to replace Garoppolo, but he's expensive. And now he is expecting to be looking for another team. He's 32 years old, that handsome fool. Anyway, it's kind of big news because we're big Jimmy Garoppolo. Well, I just have a man crush on him. He's very handsome.
He's really cute.
Yeah.
I don't know why. The guy's got millions of dollars and amazing good looks, but I feel bad for him.
Well, you shouldn't.
I think he thought he would be more successful in the NFL. And I mean, he's obviously successful. He's a, star quarterback, whatnot. But it feels like he's just getting shuffled and shuffled from team to team, and kind of the hits keep coming for him.
Well, I mean, he's played, along the way. He's not just being shuffled, but I understand what you're saying. He does, he's going to be looking for work again. The suspension, though, ends up being an 8-figure gift for the Raiders and for Mark Davis, the owner of the Raiders. A massive unforced error for the muy handsome Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah.
This is a guy who was guaranteed pay for 2024, and now he goes from that guaranteed pay that I mentioned to you, $11.25 million, to what? 0. That's right. So it's a story to watch. I know there's a lot going on with Donald Trump and the world of politics, but that's just a little something about our pal Jimmy Garoppolo. Smash the like button on this holiday. We put together a great show for you, and Kim and I will be along again at the end of the show to see how you enjoyed it. Kim, do you have any thoughts before we get started?
Well, if people have to say how they enjoyed it at the end, they should probably take some notes along the way.
Now, there's no homework on a holiday.
Oh.
Enjoy.
What could this be? Let's look. So excited. It's the Mark Thompson Show.
It still says 10 a.m. there. That's why. Happy President's Day, everybody.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Without any further delay, there has been significant delay already, and for which I apologize, Bean. But this guy, I have such immense respect, but leave me out of it. The industry of broadcasting has awarded him with pretty much every decoration and award an industry can decorate and award somebody with. He's Bean Baxter, everybody. Come on, Bean.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah, from Kevin and Bean.
How late are we running here? Are you getting to be 10 minutes late now, according to the schedule? What's going on here?
What is the story, Albert? I mean, really, it is your fault, Albert.
Whoever is producing
It's
this
true,
thing
Albert.
has no idea what they're doing.
How did we get so late? Because of the mystery?
Because of Josh, I think, yeah.
Because of Josh, yeah.
But I love Josh, and I love listening to Josh, and that sounds like a fantastic Dateline. I'm so excited about that.
You should know Bean is a friend of Josh as well, so we all kind of, it's one of these days where everybody, the stars align. But yeah, that's how we got so late. But we've got plenty of time with you because I'm blowing everything else out until the bottom of the hour.
Well, good, because I have so many comments of what I've been seeing on the show here today.
Oh, okay. Well, you want to start with your comments, then we'll get to Taylor Swift?
Yes.
Okay.
Just like when I've joined you on the radio before, I always bring topics. You know that. Okay. First of all, I'm dying to know. I haven't heard you guys discuss this much. Kim has been doing a great job of keeping us updated with the Gwyneth trial, but I want to know what your thoughts are, Mark, as a guy who has seen 100 celebrity trials in your long, illustrious broadcasting career. Does it help or does it hurt the celebrity to be a famous person in the courtroom in a case like this that is going to boil down essentially to a he said, she said?
Yeah, this is a really good question. I think that given the fact that you can see even, and you saw this in the Amber Heard trial with Johnny Depp, you see how they turn down their look. They want to turn down the red carpet celebrity part of their profile and crank up the I'm just like you normal person profile. So that must mean that based on history, you want to be as everyman as possible. So I would say on balance, probably being a celebrity hurts you a little bit. Don't you think, Bean?
I think so, too. And you're right. Gwyneth doesn't show up in an evening gown carrying her Oscar, but there are going to be people. Is it a jury or a judge trial? I don't even know. I think it's a jury trial, right?
It is.
Who are going to look at her and go, oh, she's a rich, famous white lady. I'm going to defer to Joe Q Public here in this case. And I wonder if in that case, if being a celebrity actually hurts you in terms of trying to get a fair, even, balanced trial.
Yeah, I mean, I think being a celebrity and being hugely wealthy helps you in every part of society, but maybe this one. You're
But
right.
maybe this one, right?
There she is, and she's got like a 70s glasses look going there. It's sort of like she could be on the Rockford Files with that look. You know what I mean?
Do you believe her when she says that this gentleman skied into her, or do you believe the gentleman who says the reverse?
Oh, that's a great question.
Have you thought about who you think is telling the truth? Oh, Kim's going to weigh in here. What do you think, Kim?
What do you think, Kim?
So here's my question.
Yeah.
Is it like an automobile accident where whoever rear ends you is at fault? Right?
Yeah.
Because they were driving too close. Because he hit the back of her. His skis went in between her legs. She says she feels this body on the back of her. And she's like, somebody's, trying to cop a feel. I don't know what's happening.
Well, that's what she says.
But could she have
has
skied
just
in
the
front of
opposite
him,
story.
though? Is it his fault if she skied in front of him and he had no choice because she came out of nowhere right in his path? That's what we're trying to decide, I think.
I mean, how do you put your skis in between someone's legs? If you ski right in front of them, you would have to hit them like a T-bone head on, right?
Yeah,
so
interesting.
It just seems to me that the way in which the accident happened, I don't think he's going to win it. Just because of the way it happened, because of the way that he hit her backside.
Does the jury know that she is only suing for $1 is another question I have, because that would, I think, work in her favor, that it would make, look, I'm just here because I believe in justice.
Well, and first he sued for $3 million and then he lowered it to $300,000. So it was like, was this guy out for money or what? Right.
Yeah. Soon it's just going to be
my bad. I'm sorry.
All right.
Should
have never brought it. Yeah.
Interesting take. Thank you, Kim. All right. Item number 2, Mark.
Yes,
I've talked about this on my podcast too, and I'm serious about this, and I'd be curious to hear yours and Kim's reaction to this.
What's the name of your podcast, Bean? Just to kind of give you a
cup
little
of
bump.
tea and a chat, if folks want to
give you a Mark Thompson show bump, a cup of tea and a chat. Okay,
it's on Patreon, and it's not worth it. Don't even forget about it. Okay, but here's the question I have for you.
Bean. Go ahead.
Is the former guy calls her Stormy Horseface Daniels, right? Which is terrible. I hate everything about it. But I also hate this that I see in almost every media outlet. Every single time that case that's being discussed in New York is brought up, she is referred to by her occupation, adult film star Stormy Daniels. My question to you, Mark, is how is that relevant at all to the story?
Well,
if she were a paralegal, if she were a landscaper, would every mention of Stormy Daniels also include paralegal Stormy Daniels, landscapers? I say no. I say it's only there to make the article clickbait and more salacious. It's not relevant.
I think you're right. Certainly you're right about its relevance. But if you look at, and I think you're right that it's clickbaity, but if you actually look at other media reports and as when they refer to people, sometimes they will refer to media tycoon Sumner Redstone, a former CBS boss, Les Moonves. They will tack on the person's profession, and her stated profession is as a pornographic actress. So to that extent, I think it's sort of forgivable. That doesn't in any way deny your first 2 points, which seem solid,
Yeah, it just bugs me every time. I feel like they're only doing it because they're casting shade on what she does for a living, as if somehow
Let's ask Kim, because
worse.
Kim,
okay,
Kim, you'll cast the deciding vote.
I feel like it's relevant, Bean. I have to say it's relevant, and here's why: because it's an affair, because she's a sex worker, because she was paid for sex. It goes to the relevance of the case that she sells sex for a living. So the fact that he likely had sex with her and paid her for it is, I think it seems to let it, it's relevant to state such.
I think it's just an attempt to make the affair seem scummy.
I think it's that, but both can be true, though, Bean. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
both can be true. It's a legit way, and it makes the affair, a little sexy. John said they don't call Trump former president. They actually do say former President Trump.
I call him every time I call him former president.
Right.
But I do, because he is the former president, and it,
Oh, they don't call him John. I see. Meaning he's a John.
He's a John.
I'm sorry. I understand.
Well, but the more his name is put in connection with, adult film star Stormy Daniels, the more embarrassing it is, or should be, I would think.
Yeah. Okay.
I think, but to Kim's point, Bean, I think you're right. They're trying to smear it further. They're trying to embarrass him further by calling an adult film. So, but again, all these things can be true. You can both embarrass him further, you can make it more clickbaity, but this is also typically, I think, the way people are referred to by their, by their
All right,
former
one more topic, and that
job.
is the shooter in Nashville that Kim has brought us news of is a 28-year-old woman. How long has it been, Mark, since we've seen a mass shooter who was a woman? How long?
No, it's almost exclusively the area of men. That's right.
It's the most shocking detail of this story to me.
Yeah.
I can't get my head around it.
We'll get more details on her, but yeah, you're right. Just the gender alone is something that distinguishes it it's a major distinguishing feature.
Very busy news day here today on the Mark Thompson Show. And
really
may I
is.
just say
Thank you.
this, by the way, and I know I've told you this privately, I'm so proud of you and your team and what you're putting out here every day. It's an outstanding show. I try to watch a little bit anyway, every single day. I think you're doing fantastic work. How are you doing in terms of corralling your former KGO audience to know that the shop is open and that you're available for business?
That's been the biggest challenge because we didn't have a chance. We had to just go off the air suddenly. And a lot of those people don't know we're here. A lot of those people aren't used to watching YouTube. To you, it's no big deal. But to my audience, a lot of whom were just, passive radio listeners just passing through KGO, and even some of them dedicated KGO listeners, they're not used to watching things on YouTube. So it's much harder.
So unless they follow you on social media, there's no way for them to even get the word out. There's no advertising.
Kim, I think, maybe blasts occasionally on Facebook. I don't know. I'm not really on Facebook much. Facebook is where many of them may be. So if we were really aggressive in the Facebook, I'm having trouble just kind of getting all the variables together for keeping the show on YouTube and, trying to smooth out certain areas and trying to boost Patreon participation, your Patreon as well, I know. And just trying to make payroll, it's tricky. But what I'm trying to say is some kind of Facebook spend where you advertise for your show, where your audience might be, is probably a smart thing. We just haven't quite had the resources to do it yet.
I've been doing my show 2.5 years, and we still have the same conversation. We still haven't pulled the trigger on that. We probably need to. I'm sure there are people out there who used to listen to Allie and me, my podcast partner, on the radio, who just have no idea that our show exists. So it's just a question.
What's great about you is you have, I think, just more of a social media reach than I do. You were on the air, were dominant for so long. So it's cool that you've been able to corral a lot of people. I don't know if obviously it's not everyone, but I love that you've been able to. When you fire a flare, I think more people see it maybe than when I do. But,
well, I'm very grateful for that. I've had an audience that's followed me for a long time. By the way, do you love what I put under my name here on the screen? You're allowed to put your company or whatever you want to promote.
Yeah, knows the truth about Mark. It's true, but the truth is all so flattering and impressive, Bean. I'd be happy for you to spill the tea.
And the truth about Mark, and I'm here to say it, he's even more handsome in person, ladies.
Yes,
I know you're looking
everybody?
at him and go, how is it possible he's that good looking?
How is it possible he could be on TV? Look at how white I look. It's unbelievable, and I can't do anything. And then I'm starting to realize maybe I am that white. Maybe I am that chalk white. It's just
you are a very white dude, but maybe being a weatherman for so long, maybe you know that you shouldn't be spending any time out there in the sun. Is the whiter you are, the longer you'll live without cancer.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
You're happy.
Bean, tell us about Taylor Swift. Did you go to the concert?
I haven't been to the concert yet. I have tickets. I was among the lucky few who was able to get tickets. I won't see her until later in the summer. All right, here's what I have to say about the conversation you were having about Ticketmaster. Yeah, they're honked up. It is a monopoly, them and Live Nation, and they charge all those fees because they can. And it's horrendous, and somebody needs to step in and do something, right? The fact that they charge you $2.50 to print out a ticket on your own printer with your own paper and your own ink is a perfect example of how it's just out of control, right?
Yeah.
But I do think, having said all that and agreeing with everyone on Ticketmaster, it's a supply and demand problem when it comes to a tour like Taylor Swift's. The people who were able to get tickets aren't that mad at Ticketmaster right now. It's the vast majority of people who weren't able to buy tickets to the show because the desire so outstrips the available tickets. She's doing 52 stadiums, okay? And that is not, she could do 10 times that many and wouldn't sell tickets to everyone who wants to go see Taylor Swift. It really is a supply and demand situation for the most part, I think.
Of course, you're right. That's what animates the anger. And by the way, Albert, it might be nice if we could just organize a picture of Taylor Swift while Jean is, there you go.
Boom, there she is.
Jean Baxter is talking. There she is. And by the way, just on her, she is a mega talent who is connected to her fans in ways. I think it's unprecedented the way she's connected to her fans. Is that a fair way to put it?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think she came up at the right age and the right maturity of the internet to have that connection where she really did personally interact with thousands and thousands and thousands of fans who are now stands for life. And she has just continued to always have a wonderful social media presence. And she does so many things. I mean, she's an artist who invites fans to her home for an unveiling of the new album, for instance. You know, there was a story just in the news last week. She sent tickets to a little girl who had a serious burn 5 years ago, was involved in an accident where she was burned. Taylor had visited her in the hospital 5 years ago, Mark, and said, I know what you're going through right now, but one day you're going to get out of this hospital after all of your skin grafts, and I'm going to let you come to one of my concerts and see you again. 5 years go by. Those tickets arrive at that little girl's house. She was 8 at the time of the accident, 13 now. Tickets out of nowhere arrive from Taylor Swift saying, hey, I'm in your town this weekend. Please come see me.
Wow.
That's the type
That's
of connection
a great story
that she has with her fans is just amazing. And I want to say this.
Can I just say that? Yeah, please. You say you want to say, and I want to say, your want to say takes a precedence over my want to say. Go ahead.
I know that there are people, I can't read the chat right now, but I'm sure that there are many of your listeners who gloss over hearing any news about Taylor Swift because they think she's just a vacuous teen pop star. First of all, she's 33 years old. She's had a 17-year career. She's won 3 Album of the Year Grammys. She sold 120 million records. She's, as you pointed out, the biggest artist in the world today. And having said all of that, and even on top of the 52 sold-out stadiums this summer in America, I still think somehow she's underrated, Mark. I still think not enough people appreciate her as an artist of the century right now. What she's doing now is like what a Joni Mitchell did in her day, or to use her namesake as an example, James Taylor, except in some ways it's even different because she has changed genres so much, starting off as a teen country star, turning into a pop star, then turning into more of an electronic star with her album 1989, and then blowing everyone away during the pandemic with those dual acoustic albums, The Folklore and The Evermore. The kind of songwriting, her songwriting just keeps evolving. She just keeps getting better and better. Most pop acts, as you know, they come out and they're hot for 5 years, 10 years, and then they're on the decline. Then they're playing their greatest hits at the county fair. She continues to get better and better and better. I don't think there's any limit to what we're going to see from her. She's really, really special.
She has well exceeded the arc of a normal pop star, as
sure.
you said. Yeah, I mean, it's just incredible. And this gets to my point. She really is talented as a songwriter and performer. I mean, she has it all, you know. And somebody else points out in the chat, Beyonce's like her has a lot of those same qualities. I think that's probably a fair comparison.
She's the closest to Taylor. She's a one of a kind artist of her own in her own lane, and she's brilliant. Absolutely, I think they are the Twin Titans. Yeah,
these are pictures from her first concert from the Eras tour in Las Vegas, which happened just a couple of days ago.
Beautiful.
So these are shots taken there.
And she's also performing at these shows, being for like close to 4 hours or some incredible number.
The opening night in Glendale, Arizona was 3 hours and 12 minutes. She did 44 songs. Now, she's got a lot of material she's never performed live because she is so prolific. Since her last tour, she's put out 4 albums and then 2 re-records of her albums with additional songs too. So she has dozens of songs she's never played. So people were trying to figure out, how is she possibly going to put a set list together? Because she has all these previous hits, plus all these new songs we all want to see live. Well, she just decided the answer is to do them all.
That's just
44 songs.
Normally they medley it somehow, right?
That's right. But, yeah.
That's prolific's a ding word, by the way.
I know you're gonna kick me off, but I put on this shirt just for this conversation today, so I want to stand up so everybody can see.
It's a cat shirt, which I applaud.
Not just a cat. This is Taylor Swift's cat, Meredith. That's who I'm wearing on my shirt here today. She's got Meredith Grey. What? She's got Olivia Benson, and then she's got Benjamin Button. Those are her 3 cats, and this is her first and oldest cat. This is little Meredith, and I love wearing this.
I love that you know this.
Well,
what
she's
was
a
your
crazy
last?
cat lady,
Quickly as we wrap up.
Yes.
Taylor Swift among your crushes. You have met her because you were on K-Rock, right?
I have declined every opportunity to meet her. I do not
because
want
you
to
don't
meet
want
her.
to. Oh, wow.
Because my relationship with her as just a fan is perfect. I wouldn't change a thing. And by all accounts, anyone who's ever met Taylor says she's the sweetest person in the world, and no one has ever had a bad experience meeting her, but I just don't want to do it, honestly. And I don't have a crush on Taylor either, by the way.
I thought you did. Okay, I'm sorry.
I don't. It's interesting. People always assume because I'm an older man and she's an attractive young woman that somehow this must be a crush situation. I'm in awe of her talent. I love her the way I love Jackson Browne. That's how I feel about her. I just love her as an artist. I know that sounds dorky, but that's how I feel about Taylor.
No, it doesn't sound dorky at all. It sounds quite respectable, in fact. I was trying to think of crushes you have had and celebrated on the radio when you had Kevin and Bean. And I want to say...
There's somebody always comes along. There's always someone who's hot at the moment.
The model. Who was the model you were waiting
Tyra Banks. I was very into Tyra Banks.
Oh, my God. You go to Bean's house and you have like these, this is the dining room. You'd have these things like dolls that would be Tyra Banks.
All right. We don't need to get into that. We don't need to get into that, Mark.
I mean, he's married. His wife is there, too, just to be clear, for those who don't know. But I'm just saying. Hey, Bean, I want you to come back. I want you to be a regular.
No, that's not possible.
We can tell stories of the old station. We both worked at the same radio station right as we were starting our career. It was a suburban Washington, D.C. station. And there's some
happiest times of my life, Mark. Happiest times of my life.
Simpler times. But how many times have you won the Marconi Award?
I don't like to keep track. The number isn't important, Mark.
All I'm saying is I didn't think you could win it more than once. You have. So that's how good Bean is. Yeah.
No, you're very kind, and I enjoy the opportunity to talk to you, whether it's on or off mic. So thank you for inviting me. But I just have to say, I'm so happy for you guys. I'm so proud of you guys. I can see how much work it shows on the screen. It shows on the content that you're delivering every day. I don't like it enough to contribute to the Patreon. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to do that. But I will support you in my own way by occasionally tuning in and watching for free. That's what I'll do.
Wow, that really is...
you get nothing.
Right. We love our Bean. Come visit again.
Thank you. I'd be happy to. Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Robert. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Mark. Bye-bye.
Yeah, good times. Bean Baxter, everybody. How cool is he?
He's really cool.
The Mark Thompson Show.
This is a thrill for me. I've been looking forward to this for some time. I've been watching this guy and in stunned admiration of how comfortable he weaves the most fabulous stories through a comedy act and through conversation. And indeed, he has had record-breaking appearances on television. Late Night with David Letterman, The Tonight Show, and opening act for Frank Sinatra for 14 years all over the globe. And he's appeared in over 500 television programs. I'm getting this from his website. And it's no surprise. I mean, you've seen him on so many different shows. And one of the reasons I like him is because he is a connection to what I really feel was show business. I mean, the show business that I grew up thinking, wow, like I'm talking Liza Minnelli, Natalie Cole, Smokey Robinson, Sammy Davis Jr., and Frank Sinatra. And his stories around Frank Sinatra and growing up in Chicago inform so much of his great comedy. But he's a virtuoso comic, and he's still working.
It's probably the best stand-up in the racket.
He's funny. Did I say that twice? Oh, good. Well, he is.
Here he is. Personal favorite of mine. This guy, among the new comedians, is young and gifted.
Very much. You look great. That's all we need, another bright new young comedian.
Good friend of mine, a wonderful comedian.
Please welcome my old buddy,
Tom Dreesen.
Tom Dreesen.
Tom Dreesen.
Tom Dreesen.
Here he is, Mr. Tom Dreesen.
Tom Dreesen.
And to this day, people say, "Who's Tom Dreesen?" It was a great start.
All right. Put it together for Tom Dreesen, everybody. I'm super excited to have you here, Tom Dreesen. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mark. I enjoy it. I always enjoy talking to people that, especially people who love the business that I've been in for 53 years. You know,
I adore it, and I adore the stories, and I feel somehow like I wished I'd lived in that time. I don't know if that maybe we always see it, the grass greener thing. But I neglected in the intro, and I want to do it now, and I'll mention it also throughout our conversation along the way. But you also did a book which does chronicle some of what we'll probably touch on today and those stories with Sinatra. I think it's called Still Standing, right?
Yeah, the title is Still Standing. The subtitle is My Journey from Streets and Saloons to the Stage and Sinatra. And it's just it's a retrospective of my life. And it's done real well. As I said in the pre-interview, that I had over 450 5-star reviews, and people really enjoy the book a lot. And I'm glad, because I'm an avid book reader myself, and I like to read a good book. And I'm glad people are enjoying my journey, because there's a lot of ups and downs, and it's a story of triumph. Because in this business that we're in, and prior to me ever being in show business, I was knocked down a lot in my life. Still standing is a double entendre. I've been a stand-up comedian for 53 years, but I've been knocked down a lot in my life, and I kept getting back up again. And so it's a story of triumph, and I hope it encourages other people to get back up again.
Well, it's interesting you say you've been knocked down. You actually started down. I mean, I think you, one of the other reasons I have mad respect for you is that you started as not a stage guy. You started, I think, as a kind of a working class guy in Chicago. I mean, you were in construction. You were in, this is all the stuff I know of your life is one of having, being a long way from show business to begin.
No question about it. I came from a family. We had 8 children. There were 8 of us, 4 boys and 4 girls. We were very poor, very poor. We lived in a shack. We had no bathtub and no shower and no hot water. It wasn't during Depression. I'm not that old, but I'm not a kid either. But anyhow, it was if a window broke, you stuck a rag in it. If you had holes in your shoes, you put cardboard in it. We were raggedy poor. I shined shoes in taverns from the time I was 10 years old. I set pins in bowling alleys. I caddied in the summertime. I sold newspapers on the corner, all to help feed my brothers and sisters. And none of this do I regret. But that's how I grew up. And by the time I was 16 years old, I dropped out of high school because I was going to high school. Mark, when you go to high school, everybody dresses to the nines, or people have their daddy's car and all that. And I had holes in my shoes and raggedy clothes. So I dropped out of high school at 16. At age 17, I went into the Navy. Prior to that, though, I ran with a pretty tough crowd growing up in pool rooms and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's when you talk about saloons. I mean, you really you inhabited that world, or it was all around you anyway, even as a kid, right?
Yeah, there were 38 taverns in Harvey, Illinois. I grew up in a suburb on the south side of Chicago, Harvey, Illinois. There were 38 taverns in Harvey. My father was well known in every single one of them. But I shined shoes at all the bars. There were 8 in my neighborhood that I shined shoes in, and it had an effect on me, because my mom was a bartender in one of those taverns, and so I would shine shoes in all 7 of the taverns, and I'd go to that tavern, my last tavern, and I would sit there and wait till the factories changed their shifts, and then I'd go back out again. But while I was in there, my mother behind the bar, my mother's brother-in-law, Frank Paltrow, was behind the bar, and he told jokes, and I was fascinated that this guy, with his vocabulary, his vernacular, could hit a punchline and cause this sound to come out of everybody's body, this laughter that filled the room like electricity and united everybody. And I was so fascinated by that I used to tell a lot of his jokes, many that should not be told on a Catholic school playground, But
and
that was
you were an altar boy, as I recall, right?
Oh yeah, I was an altar boy. I was all those things in Catholic school, but anyhow, so that was my childhood.
But in addition to him giving this sort of gift of laughter, there's a popularity that comes with being able to make the whole room laugh like that, right? It's a status, I think, almost. Am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right. But also, I love making people laugh. I once wrote a poem called "The Sound of Laughter," and I'm not going to do it for you, but it's in my book. But the opening lines are, "As far back as I can remember, or shortly thereafter, I love to hear the sound of laughter." But, and the other thing too, truthfully, most comedians would never admit this, but they suffer from an addiction. It's called approval addiction. Sure. And night after night, you're going out there for approval. And when they're laughing, that's about as the greatest approval you could possibly get, other than a parent telling you they love you,
Sure. And it's interesting, and so many that didn't get that parent telling them I love you seek comedy or seek the stage to sort of make up for that void. I see what you mean. As a kid, these impressions, they stay with you. And so you, from that background, never would have connected you to this amazing rise in show business. When was the first time you actually took a stage as a stand-up?
Well, but I wanted to complete one thing. At age 17, I went in the Navy. I spent 4 years in the Navy. I got a high school diploma from the Navy. I went to junior college nights, and I started reading books all on how to improve the mind. Way back to Norman Vincent Peale, The Power of Positive Thinking, A Guide to Confident Living, Maxwell Maltz, Psycho-Cybernetics, Joseph Murphy, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind. And I started applying those sciences to my life. But I get out of the Navy. I got a wife. I get married. I have one child, another child. Pretty soon I have 3 children. I'm doing construction work. I'm a Teamster. I'm loading trucks. Then I dropped my Teamster card. I became a foreman of these 48 guys that I used to work with. I was now their foreman, which was another story in itself. But I was a bartender and at nights. And so I was just wandering aimlessly. And I actually got to the point where I'd be in a bar with my buddies some nights. At 2 o'clock in the morning, I'd look around and say, I don't belong here, but I didn't know where I belong. And Mark, I honestly started praying. I said, God, what is it I'm supposed to be doing? I joined the JCs, a civic group. JCs were young men of action in those days, and they worked on community problems. And by working on the problems of the community, you learned how to serve on a committee, how to chair a committee, subcommittees, how to conduct a meeting, Robert's Rules of Order. And I started working on problems of the community. One of the biggest problems in those days, as today, were our young people and drugs. So I wrote a drug education program teaching grade school children, 8th graders, the ills of drug abuse with humor, a concept I had. Play some music, do some funny things, get them laughing, and then plant the seeds of the ills of drug abuse. I wanted to get them before they went into high school. In many cases, we were too late even at that. Now, at this time, and I say, I'm praying, God, what am I supposed to be doing? Show me. One day, I proposed this at a JC meeting that I wanted the JCs to sanction this project, and then I was going to go into the schools. And I had a friend that was going to help me, a white guy named John DeBoer. He was going to work with me. He was in the JCs. At that very first meeting, a young black man from Norfolk State College, he was graduated Norfolk State College. E.I. DuPont recruited him into Chicago as a marketing rep, and he joined the JCs. He walked up to me afterward. He said, gee, I'd like to work with you on that project you have. I said, I'm sorry, I've already got a guy. As fate would have it, or prayers answered. The next day, John DeBoer calls me and said, Tom, I can't do that with you. I've got a new job. I said, gee, what was that black guy's name? Oh, yeah, Tim Reed. So Tim Reed and I sit down, we rehearse it. We walked into that classroom the first day, and I knew, oh, what a blessing, because the students were black and white. We had integrated classes. So the moment we walked in, 2 young guys, a black and a white guy, we got their attention. And we played off of one another. We played music and got the kids laughing, and we planted the ills of drug abuse. The program became #1 in 50 states and in 22 foreign countries through JC publications on how to teach drug education at an elementary school level. Because in those days, they weren't teaching drug education at a college or a high school level, let alone an elementary school level. One day, a little 8th grade girl walking out of the classroom stopped and said, you guys are funny. You ought to become a comedy team. And the thought of a black-white comedy team intrigued us because no one had ever done that before. So we said, you want to do it? Yeah, I'll do it. We didn't know what to do. We would sit down and write what we thought was comedy. Now, in those days, there were no comedy clubs in America. There were none. No comedy clubs. It was 1969. And so we had to put together an act for a nightclub. So long story short, we start working what they affectionately call the Chitlin Circuit, black-owned, black-operated nightclubs. In Chicago, the Burning Spear, the High Chaparral, the Guys and Gals Lounge, the Cotton Club.
Had you been to those places before, Tom?
No.
Or was this okay?
No. Although I grew up in Harvey in a predominantly black neighborhood, and I played basketball on an all-black basketball team. I played football on an all-black football team, and that was a lot of my routines that I would do in my earlier days about being the only white guy in an all-black situation. As a matter of fact, I have an album in front of an all-black audience called That White Boy's Crazy, I'm the only white comedian ever to do an album in front of an all-black audience. And whenever people would question me about it, how could you do that? How could you go in front of an all-black audience? And I always had the same answer. What color is laughter?
Oh,
What's the color of laughter?
Great response.
So, and I trademarked that and have it copywritten and everything. That's another story about another time. But anyhow,
Tom, didn't they give you a nickname on the playground when you were playing the only white guy on a black basketball team? What was your nickname?
Spot.
That's great.
That's on the album too. Yeah. And another thing.
And that's for real. That's for real. That's not a bit.
Oh, I know. I used to do so many routines about that. We had a coach named Rather. He was a black Vince Lombardi, and I'm on this all black basketball team. And if we played an all white team, at halftime, if we were losing, and we'd be in the locker room, and the coach would be in there, he's giving one of them. He said, "Don't tell me them white boys can outshoot you. I ain't talking about you, Tom. Don't tell me them white boys can outrun you. I ain't talking about you, Tom." Yeah.
That's great. That's absolutely great.
But that was my introduction. So my first time on stage, in answer to your question, you notice you ask a short question and I give you a long.
I love it.
So the first time I went on stage, we had to go on stage somewhere at some point, and we went on stage one night. We were so scared. We had neither one of us had ever been on stage before. We wrote what we thought was funny stuff, and there was a jazz group, and they took a break, and the owner said, "You guys can go up and entertain the crowd." We got up and we went 100 miles an hour. We didn't wait for laughter. We just wanted to get through our routine. Hi, we're the comedy team of Tim Tom. He's Tim, I'm Tom. We just drove in and we just 100 miles an hour. We rushed off the stage after about 12 minutes. We got the owner in the corner, said, "How'd we do? What'd you think? He said, whoa. I don't know how you did. You never gave me a chance to laugh." He said, "Come back tomorrow and slow down." And we came back the next day, and I can remember like it was yesterday. One of the first lines out was something I had written. It got a laugh, and like it was like a B movie where the dark clouds open up and the sun bursts through, and my whole being went, "Oh yeah, this is what I want to do. I want to be a comedian." I never turned back from that. I have to tell you this: it was a Friday night. The next day was Saturday. I couldn't sleep all night long. I had a wife and 3 kids. I couldn't sleep. I got up in the morning and I went down to the corner church where I had been an altar boy, where I sang in the choir as a little boy. And there was no one in the church. It was a Saturday morning. And I got on my knees. I prayed. I said, "God, now I know what I want. I want to be a comedian. If you let me make my living as a comedian, I'll do charities." I was making all these promises, and all my prayers have been answered.
Boy, you're not kidding.
Time.
I mean, it's extraordinary. But that's that. And Tim Reed, who we saw, people may know him from WKRP, wasn't he? I mean, that was a high profile. Is that who I'm thinking of? Right?
Sure. Tim Reed was in After 6 years, the team split up. Tim wanted to be more of an actor, but it was traumatic for me because I thought Tim and Tom that was the name of our act, Tim and Tom. Sure. I thought it was going to be I wanted it to be the greatest comedy team that ever lived. It was America's first black and white comedy team, and history shows it's the last. There's never been one since us. That was 46 years ago.
Wow.
But Tim went on to be Venus Flytrap on WKRP in Cincinnati. He was on a show called Simon and Simon. He was Downtown Brown. He was on many sitcoms, and recently on a show called Sister Sister with the 2 black twins. He was the father. He's a great director, a great actor, and a great friend. We're the best of friends to this day. His children call me Uncle Tom, which is funny in itself.
Yeah.
We wrote a book a few years back in 2005 called Tim and Tom, an American Comedy in Black and White. And I'll give you a real quick funny story. We were on a book tour promoting the book, and we went to his college, Norfolk State College, which is an historical black college, Norfolk, Virginia. And we were going to speak to the students. But prior, they had a lunch, and I was at a buffet with 6 or 7 college professors, all black. And Tim's daughter had not seen me in about a year, Tori. And she came in, she's about 40 yards away, and she starts hollering, "Uncle Tom, Uncle Tom, Uncle Tom." These professors turned around and looked at her, and I said, she's talking to me. She's talking to me.
That's a great story. That's a really great story.
She came up and hugged me. I said, "Honey, you don't want to shout that out at an all-black."
Yeah, that's just
she
not
said,
right.
"Oh,
That's
I never thought. Yeah.
We're working hard for civil rights here. So I want to skip to And then I'm going to double back because there are a couple of stories from your childhood I know of, and I mean there are a jillion that you tell, but in your books and in your stand-up and even in your speaking, you do a one-man show, which I'm sick that I haven't seen. Are you still touring that at all or not?
Yeah, I'm leaving in 2 days. I'm leaving for the Midwest. I'm doing it in Michigan City, Indiana, at a theater called Uptown Social. Then I'm going into Lake Forest, Illinois, and doing it again at the John Hughes Theater. It's called The Man Who Made Sinatra Laugh. It's a 90-minute show of stand-up comedy, of course. A screen comes down, and Dennis Farina, God rest his soul, introduces me on a film. And then after the film, I come out and I do stand-up comedy for about 30 minutes. Then I segue to a bar on the stage that has a bottle of Jack Daniels, which is Frank's drink of choice, was his drink of choice. And as I tell a funny joke at the bar, all the lights go out in the theater, and on the screen, Frank is singing to me I'm behind the bar. He's singing to a bartender. It's 2:45. There's no one in the place except you and me. So when he gets to the chorus, he goes off screen and the spotlight hits me, and now the audience is in a bar with me. And I tell them, the first time I heard that voice, I was 10 years old, and I was shining shoes in Harvey, Illinois. And I take the audience from that little boy hearing Frank Sinatra on the jukebox in Harvey, Illinois, to one day carrying his coffin out of a church in Beverly Hills, California. So I take them on that journey with a lot of funny stories and poignant stories. But on the screen, pictures are coming on the screen and video authenticating the stories I'm telling. It's a fun.
I mean, it's remarkable. You were essentially, what you're saying is you were a fan of Sinatra growing up with him, and then ultimately you were his pallbearer. You became that close to him. You hung with him with this crowd, as I say, that I sort of think of as, you know, legit big time show business, a Rat Pack. You know, the Sammy Davis Jr. Sammy Davis Jr. I only met once. And it was, it might have been in the 80s. It was for a retinitis pigmentosa telethon, and he was there. And it was a small studio in Hollywood. And, I mean, by comparison, it wasn't some huge soundstage. And I mention it because he's this slight dude. And then he comes on, and he blows the back off of the place with his voice. It was unbelievable. He can do everything, right? He could do impressions. He could dance. He may have been one of the most talented people to ever live, wouldn't you say?
No question about it. I toured with him for 3 years. I would sit in the wings every night. You know, like most of the time, like there's things you can do, show business 101, where people are going to teach you as you're coming into the business a little bit about show business. Sammy was a master class to sit in the wings night after night and watch this incredible performer who had been on stage since he was 2.5 years old. He was a little boy traveling with his father. They actually put him in a little drawer in the hotel room. They pulled a drawer out. He was that tiny, you know. But he introduced me to so many things in show business. You know, I just done my first appearance on the Tonight Show, and I was getting real hot. And I did a show with him called Sammy and Company, a TV show. And he liked me. He said, "I'm going to take you on the road with me." And he did. For 3 years, we toured all over. And then also after that, it was Natalie Cole, like you said, Natalie Cole, Liza Minnelli, Gladys Knight and the Pips, James Darren, Frankie Avalon, Mac Davis, Tony Orlando and Dawn, Smokey Robinson.
Unreal.
All these, the reason why these acts used me in those days, that was before cable television. And so they had family audiences for the most part. And they wanted a comedian that didn't work what we call blue. You know, I had to write clean material. I did 61 appearances on The Tonight Show. Every time you did The Tonight Show, you had to do a new 5 minutes of clean material that could make grandma and grandpa, mom and dad, and the kids laugh. So you develop a wealth of this kind of material. And so that's why the singers wanted me, because I wasn't going to offend their audiences. You know, when cable television came along, all these children were being raised into this kind of language, thinking it was part of a comedians that all comedians talk like that. They never heard of a Jack Benny or a Bob Hope or a George Burns, you know.
That's such a good point. That's a really, I mean, the number of platforms for comics was just so much smaller than the number of platforms now. I mean, everybody, you know, can just fire up a camera and, you know, build their own sort of YouTube feed with their own comedy. How did you end up? Take me to the moment. Then I want to get back to that, skip around a little bit, but. You mentioned The Tonight Show because at that time, The Tonight Show, for just a lot of the reasons that you've just mentioned, it it became the crown jewel. Like if you could get on the Tonight Show, it would open up your world. And I'm wondering, if you can just give me the before the Tonight Show life of Tom Dreesen, and then the Tonight Show, which you clearly must have crushed, and then the life after the Tonight Show.
When the team split up, I ended up on the West Coast because in 1975, wherever you went in America, people say, "What do you do for a living?" You say, "I'm a stand-up comedian." The next question out of their mouth was, "Oh yeah? Have you ever been on Johnny Carson? If you haven't been on Johnny Carson in the eyes of America, you just weren't a comedian." Freddie Prinze did one appearance on the Tonight Show, and he got a sitcom the next day. So how do you get on the Tonight Show? All the comedians began to migrate out here to the West Coast because in those days, Johnny Carson had been in New York for years. And in 1972, he came out here to Burbank, California. Freddie Prinze did one appearance on the Tonight Show, got a sitcom the next day.
Yeah, Chico and the Man, I remember.
Chico and the Man. So everybody, now we got to get out here. There was a place called the Comedy Store. There was no other comedy clubs here in LA at that time. The Comedy Store was on Sunset Boulevard, and it was the hottest place in the world to be for a comedian.
So who was, at that time, Tom, it was who on stage, who was getting hot at the Comedy Store? Like, who were the comics that we might...
When I came out, I was the first of my class to get the Tonight Show. But I was on stage every night with all these unknown comedians. Jay Leno, David Letterman, Robin Williams, Gallagher, Michael Keaton, the girl, Elaine Boozler, the girl waiting tables was Deborah Winger. This is what I was.
Wild. And you were you were the first in the class, as you say. You were the hot one. You were the one who just had done the Tonight Show.
Yeah, I was the first to break out of that group to do the Tonight Show. And David Letterman always talks about him and Johnny Dark, and the comedians were sitting in the back of the Comedy Store watching me on my first appearance on the Tonight Show. And the pressure is enormous. It took me a long time when I first came out here. I hitchhiked up and down Sunset Boulevard. I was begging to work for free at the Comedy Store. And finally, I got an audition with Mitzi Shore, who owned the Comedy Store, for 5 minutes. If she liked you, she could put you on the regular schedule. If she didn't like you, it's back to Harvey, Illinois, pal. And fortunately, I got over and I became a regular. And I start working my way up to prime time. And I start pestering the Tonight Show coordinators to come and see me. And I finally got Craig Tennis one night to come and see me. He was looking at a comedy team called Bauman Eston and a new kid named Billy Crystal. I don't know whatever happened to Billy, but I'm with Mark Thompson right now. Anyhow.
Yes,
so they saw me and I got over. He said, "You're on next week." I get there next week on Tuesday. I'm all excited. I told the world, you go in makeup. They take you up to your dressing room. They bring you down to the green room. You're getting ready to go on. And they ran out of time. They bumped me. They said, "Tommy, come back next week." I came back in a week in the makeup, up to the dressing room, down to the green room. We ran out of time, Tom, 3 times in a row. The 4th time I go there, I'm in makeup. Fred DeCordova, the producer, comes in the makeup room. He said, "I got bad news for you." I said, "What?" He said, "You're going on tonight." Now, the pressure, because 28 million people watched that show. Not only did all of America, most of America watch that show, but the buyers from Las Vegas, all the hotels watch that show. The agencies, William Morris, all these agencies, IFA, all these agencies watch it. Managers watch it. Corporate people watch it. So the pressure is enormous. I'm behind that curtain. And not only that, my mother had everybody in Harvey, Illinois watching the show. So if I bomb, I can't even go back home.
She has this is for the 4th time she has everybody from Harvey, Illinois watching, right? Or didn't you have 3 bumps before?
Yeah, there was 3 bumps before. Now it's the 4th time. And when I walked out there, when Johnny, you're behind that curtain, they're in commercial break. Doc Sevenson's playing because they're in commercial break.
Wow,
and the music stops and your heart stops. And the light comes on the screen in front of you. And that you're going on. And Johnny introduces you. They open that curtain. You walk out there. You hit your mark. And I got my first laugh. And my first joke got a laugh. And then my second joke got a laugh. And my third. Now I'm on a roll. Johnny Carson and Ed McMahon are laughing behind me. And I got 8 applause. I finished. I said, "You've been a wonderful audience. This is my first appearance on the Tonight Show. Show business is a tough life. So if you like me, just if you like me, and you're Protestant, say a prayer. If you're Catholic, light a candle. If you're Jewish, somebody in your family owns a nightclub. Tell them about me, will you please?"
That's so wrong. You probably couldn't even do that line today.
Oh, the Jewish people were the biggest laughers up at all.
That's actually true. They probably would not get much blowback.
No, that's not. Yeah. Although some idiot today would try to find out, the politically correct police would try to find something wrong with it, because that's all they have to do. They sit in their mom and dad's basement and they're 52 years old and they're still living with mom and dad. But they say, I know, I'm going to write that's a terrible line or an anti-Semitic line.
No, you're not wrong. I mean, it's easy to get some social media mob now. It's so much easier to be critical, and so I think you're not wrong. So after that, you're saying, and you did so well, and all those people that you just mentioned, they're all watching. All those entities, the agencies, the club owners, the et cetera. And what a great way to stick the landing there on the Tonight Show. And you continue to do those Tonight shows. To the point that, I mean, you're up there. What did you 61? Is that how many you did?
Yeah, I would do 4 and 5 a year. One year I did 8 in 1 year with a couple guest hosts as well. But when you first go on the Tonight Show, to America you had arrived, but to my industry you hadn't arrived till you sat down and talked to Johnny. Right. But to our industry, when you sat down and talked to Johnny, you had arrived. And also after that first appearance on the Tonight Show, this is what happened. I got William Morris signed. William Morris, they wouldn't even allow me to walk by their agency, let alone get signed. But the next day, CBS signed me to a development deal. A guy named Lee Curlin was watching from New York, and he signed me to a development deal. Think about this. In those days, I had a wife and 3 kids, and my rent was $225 a month in an apartment that I couldn't hardly make payments for. The next day after the Tonight Show, CBS wrote me a check for $10,000 and gave me $1,850 a month for 1 year for a development deal. I was doing Dinah Shore, Merv Griffin, Mike Douglas, Johnny Carson, Midnight Special, Rock Concert, Soul Train. I'm the only white comedian ever do Soul Train. I was doing American Bandstand. I was doing Hollywood Squares, $20,000 Pyramid. All these shows, a whole world opened up to me. And all of us, for the first time in my comedy life, even after the years with Tim and Tom, the first time the rent was paid for a year, groceries, shoes for the kids. I could relax and write material. I could relax and not have to worry about it. Do we have rent money? Do we have grocery money? God,
I love that. We're talking to the great Tom Dreesen. I want to go back to Sinatra now. So remind me then how Sinatra and you connected.
I was touring with Smokey Robinson, and we were in Lake Tahoe at Caesars, and Frank Sinatra was appearing next door at Harrah's. Well, I had worked Harrah's many times with Sammy Davis, and so I was with, show you a fade again. I was with Smokey for a week there, and on any night I could have gone over to see Frank. I wanted to see him. I had seen him perform live in a Coliseum. I'd seen him twice, and he created more excitement walking to the microphone than most people did with their whole act. The room would just electrify when he walked out before he even sang a note, So I don't know why I picked this night. One night I called the maitre d' over at Harrah's and I said, I want to come over. Oh, don't worry about it, Tommy. We'll take care of you. And I came off stage that night at Caesars, and I didn't even change out of my stage clothes. I went out the side door, and Harrah's there's a casino in Harrah's. I was running over there. I'm running through the casino because I didn't want to miss Frank's opening. And out in front of the casino is the vice president of Harrah's Hotel, a man named Holmes Hendrickson. And he was talking to a big heavyset guy with a cigar. When he saw me, he said, Tommy, come here. And I reluctantly went over because I didn't want to miss Frank's opening. He said, Tommy, this is Mickey Rudin. Well, I recognized the name. That was Frank Sinatra's lawyer. He said, Mickey, this is Tom Dreesen. And I think Tom would make a great opening act for Frank Sinatra. And the lawyer got a pained expression on his face, and he rolled his eyes. And he winked at the vice president, but I caught the wink. He looked at me. He said, hey, kid, if I gave you a week with Frank, would you want more than $50,000? I said, Mr. Rudin, put it this way. If you gave me a week with Frank, would you want more than $50,000? He said, no, he said, I like this kid, And a week later, they called me, said, would you do 1 week with Frank Sinatra at the Golden Nugget in Atlantic City? I said, of course. I figured I'll try to get my picture taken with him. I'll hang it in every bar back in Chicago, and that would be it.
And that'll be it. It'll be a one-off.
That's. I really never thought of it more than that, Mark. And the second night I was with him, he and his wife Barbara took me out to dinner, and I can remember like it was yesterday. In the middle of the meal, he set his knife and his fork down, and he said, "I like your material and I like your style. I'd like you to do a few other dates with me if you're interested. And I didn't say, let me check my calendar. I said, yeah. And it turned into 14 years, 45, 50 cities a year. And
Wow.
Coliseums, 20,000 seat arenas, 40,000 in Hawaii, flying in his private jet, staying in his home 6 times a year, riding around till dawn with him night after night. He never went to bed till the sun came up, whether around the road or off the road. At first, he was the boss of this tour. Halfway through, he and I were friends. And by the end of his life, he was like a father to me. I miss him every day of my life. And I thank God. And in the 14 years I toured with him, Mark, I turned down more sitcoms than most comedians get offered in a lifetime. Because every time they offered me that, I would have to think about I couldn't tour with Frank anymore. And I knew it was the end of an era of a show business that I loved. You know, Dean, Frank, and Sammy. I did Dean Martin roast. I played golf with Dean. And Sammy. And now Frank. I wanted to ride that train to its very last stop.
Thank you. I totally get that. I mean, when I think of a Mount Rushmore-ish kind of show business representation, those guys that you mentioned are there. And to think that you're in the middle of it, why would you hop out? I understand it can be seductive, your own TV series, et cetera, but wow, what a tough decision to make to stay on tour with Sinatra. So I have a question about, you say that you're driving around with him all night and everything. What kind of stuff do you guys talk about? I mean, are you drinking like crazy? What is is it just is everybody so wasted that no one can remember what they talked about, or what sort, or is it philosophical, or what is it?
No, not me. I quit drinking, and I had to be very careful around, because he'd say, sometimes I'd order, like, it looked like a rum and Coke, but it was just Coke, and once in a while I'd have a beer, and he'd say, come on, have a real drink. He drank Jack and, Jack Daniels, on the rocks, sometimes with a splash. But no, when we'd ride around together, it's interesting that you bring that point up, Mark. When I got alone with Frank in the car, riding around the desert till the sun came up, there were times he wasn't the great Frank Sinatra. I wasn't the comedian Tom Dreesen. He was a kid from Hoboken, and I was a kid from Harvey, Illinois. And that's what we talked about: childhood, family, growing up, lessons in life. It was a great relationship that we had. In the end, it crushed me when we had been touring all these years and never knowing when is it going to end, and the time came when it would. But nobody said anything. I mean, nobody said to Frank, he wasn't well, and he hadn't worked in a long time. And I'd go visit him all the time. And one night I went over to see him, and he wasn't well at all. And nobody
was
ever
he in
brought
Palm
up,
Springs, or where was he living?
No, it was here in on Foothill in Beverly Hills. And I went over to the house to see him, and we never brought up, because you're always thinking like we're going to perform again. And he wasn't well. He was sitting down. He had like a blanket on him. We were talking. I said, I got to go. And he said, where are you going? I said, my ex-wife is in town and the kids. And he had met her, and he said, oh, give her my best. I said, okay. And he said, I said to him, he always, whenever he said he loved you, he'd punch me on the jaw. And I got even a picture of it. He'd go, love you, pal. He said, love you, pal. But this night, as I'm getting ready to go, he said, I love you, Tommy. And it stunned me, because he never said that. He just didn't do that. Like I say, he'd say, yeah, I love you, pal. But he said, I love you, Tommy. And I started stammering. I said, oh, yeah, I love you too, Frank. And I don't know what made me say it, but I stumbled. I said, hey, get well, and we'll go back on the road again. And the moment I said it, I could have bit my tongue, because and he put his hand on my cheek. He said, you're going to have to go on the road by yourself from now on. And that's when I knew that he knew he wasn't ever going to sing again. And
God, that's an intense story, buddy.
I turned around and I walked away. I went outside. I had tears in my eyes. And Barbara came out, his wife. She said, are you okay? I said, yeah, I'm fine. That was pretty rough. And she said, keep coming, Tommy. He enjoys seeing you. I got in the car and I'm driving away, and I'm thinking, Frank Sinatra is never going to sing again. That's the saddest show business news I've ever heard. And
that story has a lot wrapped up in it. That's a very poignant moment, and you're right, and a significant one. You're saying from a show business and sort of the culture standpoint. Yeah.
And I'll tell you one other quick story. When he died, Barbara called me over to the house, and she told me she wanted to be a pallbearer. Now there was paparazzi out in front of his Foothill home. on Foothill in Beverly Hills. As I was leaving, I was listening to a talk show, and a woman called in because everybody was saying Frank Sinatra died. Frank Sinatra. It was a talk show. A woman called in. She said, "My husband fought in Korea, and he fought in Vietnam." She said, and he didn't cry at his father's funeral. But today, when he heard Frank Sinatra died, he came home, and he's in his room right now, and I hear him sobbing. She said, I don't get it. I don't understand. And the radio guy didn't either, but I did. If you were a Sinatra fan, Frank Sinatra's music was a soundtrack of your life. You went steady to his music. When somebody loves you, it's no good. You got married to his music, love and marriage, love. You got divorced to his music. You're in that bar. It's 2:45. There's no. You got remarried. Love is lovelier the second time around. His music was a soundtrack of your life. If he died, if that voice died, something inside of you died as well.
That's so profound because music does touch us that way, and it connects with different parts of our life. I think that's a great point for all brilliant singers. The thing about Sinatra is that he was such a classic stylist, and his music endured and does endure for all of these decades, that, as you suggest, it's through a lifetime. That's why the loss of someone like that is even more profound. I know we have to wrap up before too long. I kind of want to...
Take your time. I have some time.
I have a question, one more little follow-up about Sinatra, then I want to double back to your life in Chicago a little bit. The question about Sinatra is, there's this sense, and Rickles used to give him a hard time about, hey, Jilly, that's enough. That's enough. Leave him alone. This kind of guy who was almost a mobster type while also being a show business figure. And it was such an open joke. It was everyone talking about it. My question to you is, how did both Frank take that, and also was that like a real representation of who he was? I mean, were there two Franks, the one we saw on stage and then there's this tough mobster guy off stage? Doesn't sound like it based on what you've said.
As an Italian American, I refuse to answer that on the grounds. I'm pleading the fifth. No, I tell you, did he know those guys? Of course he knew those guys. Right. We all knew those guys. Anybody who has any ounce of brain knows in that era, they owned all the nightclubs. They owned the places you work. They owned lots. They had places in Las Vegas they owned. So did you know them? Of course you knew them. Were you one of them? That's another story. But of course you knew them. And of course Frank knew them. He did know them, and they were involved in his life. I mean, it's not a secret that he knew Sam Giancana and a whole lot of other guys, and they were huge fans of his. But yeah, he knew them. Now, several times he went in front of 11 grand juries and was found innocent every time. I think a classic story that Mickey Rudin, his lawyer, told me. He said that one time he was before a grand jury and they gave some name. They said, "Do you know that the prosecuting attorney said, do you know Joe Stanucci, whatever his name?"
Right.
And Frank said no. And he had an 8x10 envelope, the attorney, and he goes, "You don't know so-and-so Stanucci." And he was ready to pull out an 8x10 with a picture of Frank in him. And Frank said, "No, I don't know him. I met him, but I don't know him."
No, that's great.
And the guy dropped the envelope on the floor because he knew once he pulls that picture out, Frank could say, "And last year I took 8,000 pictures just like that all over the country." So that was the one thing, the connection. But yeah, there was a connection there. By the way, and that was part of the great mystique about this man, Frank Sinatra. Aside from the fact that he was the greatest pop singer of all time, and there's no argument to that, the greatest pop singer of all time, he was a brilliant actor. He did 61 films. He won the Academy Award. He danced with Gene Kelly, for God's sake. He won the Academy Award and never took an acting lesson, in From Here to Eternity.
Wow.
So that in itself would make you want to go see him. But the mystique, was he connected? Was he not? That mystique also. Now, why was
You're right. It only fed the legend. You're absolutely the myth around him. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's funny. You just made me think of it. In Oakland, of all places, because we have a lot of people from the Bay Area watching and listening right now. The Oakland Arena, I went to see the Rat Pack. It was the 80s. It was their final tour, I felt, because everybody was just getting so old and it was Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., and Sinatra. And I'll never forget it. I scraped together my magic beans so I could buy 2 tickets for my girlfriend and myself, and we went. And Dean was first, and Dean forgot the lyrics or was like meandering around. Really, it was, the audience is with him, but I mean, he was really struggling. And who came on stage? Sammy Davis Jr. came on stage almost right away, and it became sort of Sammy and Dean. And you saw how these guys were all covering for each other. And I think even maybe Sinatra took the stage quickly. I mean, it wasn't supposed to be that way. It was supposed to be each one performing individually, and then they come on as a group. Clearly, that's the way they had planned it. But as Dean faltered, the need from the other two was felt, and they stepped up. And I said to my girlfriend, I don't think Dean's going to make this tour. And sure enough, the Chicago was the next stop, and they didn't have Dean on the tour anymore. They substituted somebody else.
Liza Minnelli.
Liza Minnelli, exactly. Good knowledge.
I was there that night. I was there. Across the street from the Chicago Theater where they were performing was ABC Studios. And Oprah Winfrey went on hiatus for a week, and they gave me that studio for 1 week to do a late night talk show. A man named Joe Ahern was the head of ABC at that time. He said, Tommy, the studio's yours for, if you do a late night talk show. I followed Nightline on ABC, and the show was called Nighttime, starring Tom Dreesen. And my first guests were going to be Frank, Sammy, and Dean. I'd already talked to them. They all agreed to it. And so they were going to be my guests. So all the promotion that whole week was that Frank, Sammy, and Dean were coming on Tom Dreesen. So Nighttime starring Tom Dreesen. And the night before the show, Dean and Frank got into it a little bit, and Dean went home. And everybody said that he had kidney trouble and all that stuff, and went back, but it wasn't true. They had a run-in. And so anyhow,
wow.
I'm hung out to dry. So
that's go ahead.
Barbara Sinatra and Altavis Davis subbed for them. They were my first guests, and they came on because Frank and Sammy went on to New York to get Liza, to rehearse with Liza.
Sure.
Yeah, but I was in the audience that night. Yeah.
You bring up an interesting thing. I hadn't even thought of it. Honestly, it's never occurred to me, which is weird. Those guys hung out a lot together, the Rat Pack, and you were around them. They couldn't have possibly all gotten along all the time. There must have been some friction.
Well, first of all, Frank was the leader, and everybody knew that. I mean, that Sammy Davis used to sing on stage, I gotta be me. He'd say, I gotta be me. I'd rather be him, He pointed Frank. Yeah,
maybe they did all get along then. They kind of knew your pecking order, and what you're saying.
In their younger days, they really got along great. They loved one another, and they were just huge hits. There wasn't any competition, although everybody knew Frank was the leader of the group. But as he got older, Frank also had mood swings, and it's not a secret anymore. Frank suffered from, he told Walter Winchell many, many years ago that he thought he was a 24-karat manic depressive. Later on in life, Frank was using, I think it was Alavil or something like that, a mood stabilizer. So, a few drinks. And here, I was a bartender for years, Mark. And when I was a bartender, before I was ever in show business, when I came out of the service, I noticed my buddies, when they were drinking, they would go through one of the 3 R's. I always called it the 3 R's. Some guys, a couple of drinks, and they were Rocky Marciano. They wanted to fight everybody in the place, Some of them, a couple of drinks, they were Rudolph Valentino, and they wanted to every girl in the place, And some of them, they became Rip Van Winkle. They just, so alcohol affect everybody differently. Frank was Rocky Marciano. A couple of drinks, and he would be, he'd get feisty. And by the way, one of the reasons the staff liked me around him, and then both my parents are alcoholic. I grew up in bars. My mom quit drinking later on in life, but I grew up in taverns. I grew up around drinkers my whole life. So I could see that coming on. And if I saw that coming on Frank, I'd say, hey, Frank, tell me about that time you and Dean got in the sports car. Oh, yeah. I could always change the
that's a gift, buddy. That's a gift. Yeah.
Well, I saw it coming because, again, I was around alcohol my whole life. So I could change the subject and get him laughing again and all that, He was
Tom, when you, I was just going to go back to Chicago. I've heard so much. There's the Rat Pack. We've shown some pictures along the way of the Rat Pack. That's the 3, and then Lawford and Joey Bishop are also in there, right, Tom? They were in that same orbit.
I knew Joey real well. I didn't know Peter. I knew Frank disowned him at one day. He got very angry with him over that the whole Kennedy episode. And so there's a movie called...
He felt that Lawford might have had something to do with dry cleaning the whole
and it was unfair because Peter was, you're killing the messenger. He came to Frank and said, you know, how can we go into this whole thing without going into a long story? In the 1960 election, when John Kennedy got elected, there was a lot of controversy about what happened in Illinois and in West Virginia. The truth is, Frank Sinatra got a call from Joe Kennedy,
Jack Kennedy's dad, right?
Dad, yeah, and he's an astute politician. He knew all about politics, and he wanted his son to become president of the United States. He wanted his first son to become president of the United States, but he was killed in World War II, and so Jack was the next step, and he wanted Jack Kennedy to become president. And so Frank and Sammy and Dean campaigned all over the country for them. And a few months before the election, Joe Kennedy called Frank Sinatra to his home and said, my son cannot get elected. We will lose West Virginia. It's 95% Protestant, and they won't vote for a Catholic. And we're going to lose Illinois. The downstate Republicans are going to beat us. He said, you know the guys that can change that. And Joe Kennedy said, I know them too, but I can't go to them. Because the Kennedys were bootleggers long before they were legitimate. Right. You know, and that's historically accurate. So Frank went to Sam Giancana and they're talking. Long story short, in West Virginia, all the unions start supporting Kennedy, and he won West Virginia. And the last state in was Illinois, and those electoral votes swung the election. There was somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 or 30,000 dead people voted in that election.
Right.
And so now
that was legitimately an election that had questions around it. Yeah.
Now after that, John Kennedy was coming to Frank's home, his compound, to be there, and Frank was excited because he said to his mom, you know, he said, this is his story. He said to his mom, you know, in one generation, came from Italy, the president of the United States is staying in our home. And he put, in those days, $1.3 million, a heliport, everything. It's almost completed when Peter Lawford visited and said, Jack can't come here. And Frank said, what are you talking about? He can't come. He said, he can't come here. Bobby doesn't want him to come here because you know those people. And Frank said, I know those people. Those people his dad asked me to go to because I know those people that got him elected. You know, and he said,
yeah, he's right. He's right.
And Peter said, you know, don't kill the messenger. But he told Peter to get out of it, and he never talked to Peter again, which was a shame.
Wow. Wow. That's a great story, boy, about Sinatra really just feeling snubbed after he had done the heavy lifting to get the guy elected.
And did all those things. You know, one thing about Frank Sinatra that you learn, he was very, very, very loyal to his friends. If you were his friend, there wasn't anything he wouldn't do for you. He was also a Sicilian. If you worshiped the ground you walk on, or he hated you, you know. But hold on one second.
Yeah. And then.
But however.
Go ahead. No hurry.
To prove that point. Wow, I got a dry spot in my throat. Hold on.
Yeah. Don't choke to death on our show, Tom. It would be a less than elegant way to end your career.
But it could boost the hell out of your career.
That's true. That's true. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for thinking that way, Tom Dreesen.
Yeah, but the point is, the first time I ever visited Frank's home, they had a buffet, and the first night there was all these stars there at a cocktail party that night, and I was stood in the back, and there was Gregory Peck and Jack Lemmon and Kirk Douglas and their wives, you know, and there's Robert Wagner and Joe St. John and Angie Dickens and all these stars, and I'm going, wow. And then there's a guy in the corner that I said, God looks so familiar. A good-looking guy, nice. I said, he looks so familiar. He must be a character actor. Later on, I found out it was Spiro Agnew. Spiro Agnew. Well, here's the point. Yeah. Spiro Agnew had fallen from grace from the sea. He was a former vice president of Richard Nixon, but he had fallen from grace from the sea and was blackballed everywhere he went. But he had been Frank Sinatra's friend back then, and he was still his friend now. Just because you came into some hard times in your life, that didn't change Frank's opinion, and that's how loyal Frank was.
That's a great story to tell on the heels of the other one too, because Sinatra could have said, "Nah, it's a bad look to have Spiro Agnew here, you know, the corrupt vice president." But that wasn't. Loyalty took favor over that, priority over that.
Friends, the last lesson Frank Sinatra taught me, he taught me a lot of lessons. we're at his home. It was his 82nd birthday. He died 5 months later. All of these stars that I mentioned, most of them were there that night. And Frank was off to the side. He wasn't well. And he was eating slow, and he had a caretaker helping him. And everybody started making small talk. They're waiting for the cake to come out. And somebody said, where's the best place to live? And Gregory Peck said, well, Veronique and I have a villa in France, and we like it there. Robert Wagner, Joe St. John said, we have a place in Aspen. We like it there. And Frank, off to the side with his head down, said, the best place to live is where your friends are. And everybody went, oh, yeah. My point, here is the greatest career Chauvin has ever known, arguably. Amassed a fortune, all these awards, Oscars, Grammys. In the end, it wasn't about any of those things. It was about friendships. And that's the last lesson he taught me.
That's terrific. By the way, tell me about Frank Jr. passed away. Is that what happened, Tom? Tell me, it was Frank and Nancy, were those the two kids, right?
And Tina.
Tina,
Frank,
sorry, excuse me.
Two girls and a boy. Tina runs the company now, Frank Sinatra Enterprises, and Nancy's 83 or 84. She's still hanging in there. I guess I haven't seen him in years, but the son Frank Jr. Is he still alive? I'm so sorry. No, he passed away. No,
that's what I thought. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
He passed away a few years back. Well, while I was on tour with Frank, the first 7 years, the last 7 years, Frank Jr. conducted the orchestra.
Oh, sure, right.
Dad.
Yeah,
and he was a great musician, and a good singer. But how would you like to go into baseball with your name Mickey Mantle Jr.?
Thank you. It's just it's brutal. I mean, I always felt for the guy, even though I know he came from some privilege because of his dad, but I always felt from it, that name. Yeah, you're right. I mean, Mickey Mantle Jr. There they are, the two kids. Thank you, Kim. I want to go back quickly in our last few minutes and just ask you about some stories from your childhood, because you did come. It's a different place now, Chicago. Back then there was a tremendous mob influence, and as you say, mobs were all in the clubs and everything. And I'd forgotten that until you reminded me of it. I know that they owned like stuff in restaurants like jukeboxes, like you couldn't, it was a weird thing. They infiltrated, the tentacles of the mob were everywhere. It wasn't just protection money. It was other stuff too, right, Tom?
Sure. They owned every bar or restaurant, anywhere that had a jukebox. That in those days, they didn't call them the mafia or the mob. They were the syndicate. They were syndicate. Any video machines, and they put them in your bar. You had no choice. Frank Polizzi, who was the owner of the tavern, was an Italian guy who came to this country when he was 7 years old. The guy that was my mom's brother-in-law, my uncle. When I was a little boy with my shoe shine box, he just opened a tavern. He had a jukebox he paid $100 for. It played 78 records. One day, a truck pulls out in front. This is in my book, by the way. A truck pulls out in front. Two big guys bring a big, beautiful jukebox in. And Frank is in the back having lunch, and my mom and my aunt are tending bar. And they came in and they said, sign here, Mrs. Polizzi, to my aunt. She said, what's this for? He said, for the jukebox. She said, we have a jukebox. She said, no. We supplied the jukeboxes here. She went and got Frank. Frank comes out. He's wiping, I never forget, he's wiping his mouth off. He said, what is it, fellas? A mob guy from Blue Island, Illinois, named Babe Tuffanelli controlled all that. He said, Mr. Tuffanelli sent this jukebox over, signed Mr. Polizzi. He said, I got a jukebox, get it out of here. They said, Mr. Polizzi, our orders are, I don't care what your orders are. I have a jukebox that I worked in a factory 12 hours a day to build this tavern and to buy that jukebox. Get it out. And they wouldn't get it out of there. They said, we're leaving it here. Mr. Tuffanelli, Frank Polizzi put it on a two-wheeler, took it outside and dumped it on the sidewalk, and it broke. My mom and my aunt pulled out the rosary. Now I'm a little boy.
Yeah, really, that would be the kind of thing could legitimately get you killed, right?
A half an hour later, out in front, you hear, a car pulls up, doors open up, three guys get out. One of them is this guy, Babe Tuffanelli. He comes in, he confronts Frank Polizzi, right toe-to-toe. You broke my jukebox? Frank said, I told your goons to get it out of here, and they wouldn't get it out. And he went toe-to-toe with them. And they're going back and forth arguing. He said, I worked at a factory, and he said, go muscle other people. But I'm Italian too, and he said, and I came here to this country when I was 7 years old. And they're going back and forth. Now, Tuffanelli finally ends the conversation. He said, I'm going to let you have your jukebox. But if you ever leave this tavern business, I want you to come and work for me. And Frank Paltrow said, I'd never work for the likes of you. He didn't like mafia.
Wow.
He said, I wouldn't. And that's, where I came from, so they controlled everything. Yeah. But however, again, there's other sides of those stories. If wherever the Italians were, there was nobody roaming the streets snatching purses and writing graffiti because you just didn't do that.
Sure,
when I was growing up,
it's the line that the garbage got picked up without any problem, and the trains ran on time type thing. It's a weird trade off, right, Tom?
Yeah, Well, hey, by the way, my charity in Chicago is the Illinois Fatherhood Initiative, because I'm all for fatherhood in America. When I was growing up, in the black neighborhood, and the Irish neighborhood, the Italian neighborhood, the Polish neighborhood, Jewish neighborhood, we were more afraid of our fathers than we were of the police. If there was a young Polish kid roaming the Polish neighborhood snatching purses, the Polishman in that neighborhood took him by his ear and took him home to his father. Said, you know what your son was doing? That happened in the black community and all the other communities. We were more afraid of our fathers. One night, I was setting pins in a bowling alley. My black friend, Everett Nicholson, who I wrote about a lot in my book, coming home, the squad car got us. Get in the car. What are you guys doing out so late? We said, we're setting pins in a bowling alley. Okay, we'll give you a ride home. Gucci, Everett Nicholson, his nickname was Gucci. He said, officer, please don't. You'll never see me on the street again. If I pull up in front of my house in a squad car, there's hell to pay with my father. Please, you'll never see me on the street again. And Gucci was a tough guy. Everett Nicholson was a tough guy. My point of that whole thing is we were more afraid of our fathers than we were the police. In Harvey, Illinois, in 1960, 3% of the children being born were being born without a father in the home. Today, 72%. Three out of every white children in America have no father in the home. Almost 5 out of every Hispanic have no father in the home, and 7 out of every 10 African American have no father in the home. That's the destruction of America. Break down the family, and they have successfully done that with a thing called the War on Poverty, which well-intentioned but misinformed. In those days, in 1964, Lyndon Johnson passed this thing. If you have one baby out of wedlock, you get $250 or something. If you have 2 babies from 2 different men, $500. If you have 3 babies from 3 different men, $750. And by the way, if one of those men is living with you, cohabitating, you get nothing. So the government became the father of the family. Where we grew up at, the mantra was all throughout the neighborhood. You get a girl pregnant, you'll stand by her. If a girl got pregnant, when I was 13 years old, my mother said, you get a girl pregnant, you'll stand by her. I was 13 years old, but the point is,
I guess your mom sensed something in your life, Tom, that you might be sexually active. Yeah.
Of course, all of us. But the point of that is that if you don't take care of that baby, we, the family, have to. Sure. And then the government came along and became the father of all these. And that's what, if anything is going to, you won't destroy America from without. We're a very strong military. I'm an ex-GI. We got the greatest military ever assembled. But you can destroy us from within. Anyhow, that's the end of my.
No. I think these are good points all. And you on the one hand to build a safety net for those who need it. You don't want to always just hope that Tom Dreesen's charities have to do the work of supporting families that need support. But by the same token, as you say, you don't want to incentivize not actually having a family or having a structure of some kind that can support these kids. I think that structure, and then we can wrap up, but I think that structure can take the form of a lot of things that, don't have to do with money, like, these community centers and pre-K stuff. I mean, this is important stuff in the development of a child. Wouldn't you agree?
Here's what I know. When I was growing up, that every Christmas and Thanksgiving in the shack that I lived in, that the Moose, the Kiwanis, the Elks, the B'nai B'rith, all these organizations would come and they'd bring baskets of fruit and stuff to the shack I lived in. And my mom, proud Irish mom, would say, no, we don't deserve that. My husband has a job. We don't deserve that. And us kids were trying to get around the door to get at the stuff, but my mom was right. He had a job and he should be taking care of us. But the other thing, it wasn't the government bringing food to us. It was people helping people. If you leave Americans alone, they won't let their neighbors go hungry. They won't. I mean, they will get together and do something. But when we keep relying on the government, all of a sudden we take away that personal responsibility. And it's my responsibility, Mark, if you're my next door neighbor and you're hungry, I've got to help you.
I think you really point to community and the power of community. And there's no question that those areas of life that involve community show the greatest support for, broken families or people in distress. There's absolutely no question about that. So how can you not support an effort like that? So, Tom, you have a main website, don't you, Tom Dreesen? What's the
TomDreesen.com, DREESEN. Everybody puts an extra S in there, but it's DREESEN, TomDreesen.com. It's my website. It'll tell you where I'm at, what I'm doing.
And the charity is what I'm getting at too. Still Standing is the book that we're all going to pick up. And I'll tell you, and we'll super the name of the website too. We'll have it on screen as well, so people will be able to keep track of you. I'm so impressed, man, that you're still touring. I mean, when I say that, I mean you've kind of done it all. You could just kick back and go play golf, but you really enjoy it. The one-man show particularly sounds terrific.
Yeah, I love show business. I hate getting there, but I'm not like a lot of comedians throw up before they go on stage. I can hardly wait to get out there. I love making people laugh. I went on the Comedy Store a couple weeks ago with Bill Burr and Sebastian, Maniscalco.
Sure, of course, Maniscalco.
Great guys. And I just love that environment and making people laugh. It's so much fun.
Well, you're so good at it. It's also effortless for you. And, conversation is so effortless and you have so many great stories. I can't wait to get into your book. And you've given me a thrill because I really wanted to talk to you and have you on the show, and it's happened. So thank you so much, Tom, and all the best to you.
Same to you, Mark.
Tom Dreesen, everybody.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I love this book. It's called The Joy of Costco, A Treasure Hunt from A to Z, and the authors are with us, both of them. David and Susan Schwartz. What's up, David and Susan Schwartz?
Hey, thank you so much for having us.
Thanks.
Congratulations on the book. It's really cool. I want to get into some of the facts around Costco and some of the little cool stuff you have in the book. One of the things you start with in the book is how Costco happened. And I think that's really a cool story. Could you just summarize a little bit of that for us?
How the company began?
Exactly.
It all started with a guy named Saul Price. In the 1950s, his wife inherited a warehouse, and he was trying to figure out what to do with it. And some buddies came up to him and said, listen, we have a jewelry shop. Can we set up in this warehouse? And he said, sure, go ahead. And they basically started a company called FedMart. And this company grew in the American Southwest for many years. In 1976, it was bought by a German company. And Saul and his son, Robert, tried to figure out what to do next. And they came up with the prescient idea of a membership club devoted to retail that would be in a warehouse they bought in San Diego. And they called that Price Club. And they started Price Club in 76. And it was hard going at first because they thought they were restricted to wholesale only in that particular area. It turned out that was wrong. They were able to offer to anybody, and they did eventually offer membership to everybody, and it became very, very successful. It grew, and they went public in 1980. And when they did, people began to take a look at this company and think, wow, that's an interesting business model. A very small, curated number of products, about 3,800 in each warehouse, keeping the price very, very low. Membership is reasonably affordable, and obeying the law, treating members right, treating employees right, and treating vendors right. That was the discipline. And a number of people began to take a look. Sam Walton took a look at it and created Sam's Club. And a guy up in Seattle named Jeff Brotman, who started to think this would be fun up in Seattle to start. And he reached out to a guy named Jim Sinegal, who had worked with Saul for many, many years. The two of them got along like a house on fire and started a company called Costco. Costco and Price Club became fierce competitors over the next decade as they swept through the United States, opening up in places like Florida and the Northeast, and even in Canada. And eventually they decided to merge. And the merger took place, I think, in 1994. And here you are today. It's a global behemoth. It's really a spectacular success.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned global because in your book you talk about, and I hadn't even thought about all of the Costco memberships that are sold and all the Costco outlets that are all around the world. I wonder if you could spend a second on that. It surprised me.
More than a second, if you don't mind. Costco in the U.S. in 46 different states, but also in 13 other countries. And we have, in our insanity, we have been to at least one warehouse in every one of those countries and in every one of the U.S. states. In fact, we want to talk to you about how to get in the Guinness Book of World Records. We've traveled the longest distance anybody ever has who doesn't work for the company to get to a warehouse. That would be from New York City to Auckland, New Zealand.
Wow, that's great.
Direct flight. Yes, there's a Costco much closer to us.
Your Belinda. Oh, you have that up there. We're just planning that trip right now. We're going to start that on
this Saturday.
This Saturday.
Oh, that's just great. I mean, this was born of your legit love of Costco. I mean, you know, you're not authors who say, I mean, you are authors, I understand, but this wasn't like just some writing project.
No,
you
no.
legit loved Costco.
Absolutely.
Well, David was a legitimate author. He had written.
That's what I'm saying. You got, okay, I included you, Susan, to be polite, but yeah.
So Susan and I got together as a couple in 2002. And one of the first things we discovered about each other was that we both love Costco. You know, my parents had gone to Price Club. We grew up in the Bay Area. Price Club was a big Bay Area company. Susan's parents were in Philadelphia. That was Costco country. And so we immediately understood that that's what we love to do. We would go to Costco because the quality of the products are great. The prices are low, and you never know what you're going to be able to find. You turn a corner, you find some kind of wow surprise that you weren't expecting. And so in 2016, when I finished my biography of Enrico Fermi, we were talking about next projects for me. And at one point, Susan looks at me and says, why don't we write a book together? We could write a book about Costco. We both love the company. We could travel the world. It would be huge fun, and we could discover what makes the company tick.
Just a couple problems here, Mark, if I could just jump in. The first one, I've never written a book, so that's an issue. I'm not sure why I thought I could.
She's a very good writer, by the way.
Thank you. The second problem was 2016, no one had heard of COVID, so travel was going to become a lot more difficult. And then the biggest problem is that Costco is inherently modest, and they had no interest in having a book written. So it took us 2 years to meet the surviving co-founder, Jim Sinegal, and the CEO, Craig Jelinek. It took another 3 years for us to convince them we were going to be writing this book. And in fact, we were writing it. So I'll never forget the day in August of 2021, we got an email from them saying, would you like to come for a meeting? We want to talk to you about it. We understand you're going to continue and we can't stop you. And after that point on, they were really generous with their time and information. We've done this completely independently of Costco. They're still kind of modest and embarrassed at all the fuss.
I think they're embarrassed that we wrote the book, but they're you know, we're very, very grateful that they're selling it in Costco warehouses.
Well, hang on, we'll get to Kim for a second. I just want to make one point. You know, usually when you hear, oh, they're doing a book on Costco, it's going to be revelations associated with all the negatives with the company and, I mean, the controversies, and it's going to be an investigative piece that might ultimately skewer them. So you can see why they might recoil from, you know, the idea that a book's being done on them. But as it turns out, it's a love letter with all kinds of fabulous facts. Now, Kim, please go ahead.
I have been to the Costco, of course, here in the Bay Area. I live in the North Bay. And I've also been to the Costco in Maui. And I know that there are some different things in the Maui, like they have some Hawaiian music, they have more boogie boards and more surf things, but I know that you've traveled around to all these Costcos, so I wonder if you can talk about what the differences are. Is everything the same? Is it all laid out the same? Or do you find that when you go to Costco's in different areas, the products are different and things are a little bit funky in some spots?
Well, you hit it on the head there. That was part of the thrill for us as big Costco fans. To go to, well, first of all, Maui. We've been to all of the warehouses in Hawaii. We had a ball. I had never been to Hawaii, and the assortment of poke and fish is just mind blowing. They have something called apple bananas, which are really cool. But in general, about 40% of the products in any given warehouse are different regionally. So in New Orleans, you'll find shrimp oil in a huge, big, jar, and in Alaska, you get reindeer sausage. Seriously, reindeer sausage, and then in Taiwan, the famous roast chicken is sold with the head on. So for us, in the food court, let me tell you, in Canada, they have poutine. And in Australia, they've got clam chowder and mushroom soup in a bread bowl. I mean, it's just different everywhere. It's really cool for Costco fans to go and see that.
Where do they sell the chicken with the head on?
In Taiwan.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It's funny to hear Costco enthusiasts kind of nerd out to each other a moment ago when Kim is talking about, oh, I love the one in Hawaii. And you go, yeah, the one in Hawaii is really cool, but check out the one in Australia. So worldwide, it's just that way. They're all different. You had I'm doing this from memory, but I thought you had a fact in the book about, I want to say, Iceland or Greenland or someplace like that, where you said that like 75% of the people who live there are Costco members. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. Iceland, I think, has something like 360,000 people. And when Costco arrived in the country, it was the biggest thing that had happened there. And it continued to be the biggest thing that happened there for months and months and months. It was hard to get into the warehouse. People were lining up around the whole warehouse. Traffic had come to a standstill, and all that anyone could talk about was Costco, and
which made sense to us.
There's a very interesting reason for that. And the reason is because it's so remote that getting stuff there, getting products there, is really expensive. So Icelanders were used to paying very, very high prices for everything. For bath tissue, for gasoline, for fresh food, for everything, and Costco comes in and uses its extremely efficient and powerful logistics system to bring prices way, way down. And it had an effect on the whole Icelandic economy and made everything a lot more competitive. Wow. People still love, when we visited there, we were amazed. Everyone we talked to said, wow, Costco, we love Costco. So,
we felt right at home.
We felt right at home, yeah.
The Joy of Costco, a treasure hunt from A to Z is the book. Go ahead, Kim.
Les is asking what your favorite Costco is.
Oh gosh, we're not going to pick a favorite. You don't have favorite. I'll tell you.
Yeah. It's like picking between children, probably for you.
Yeah.
Exactly. Although I guess we probably all know who the favorite is in every family. Anyway, but the one in Juneau is the smallest in the world. It's really wild. You walk in and you think, where's the Costco? There's no rotisserie chicken in the Juneau, Alaska warehouse. The one in Salt Lake City is the largest. Our local, number 1062 here in Manhattan, is the third smallest. And the second smallest is in Seoul. But I think one that's really, really unique would be, obviously Maui, because the view is amazing. But one that's really unique would be Mexico City, the Santa Fe warehouse. Not Mexico, New Mexico, but Mexico, the country. And this is built on the edge of a large national park in the gorge. And half of the cost of this construction was the rooftop, which is open to public because it has a contemplative garden and a skateboard park and sports fields. So Costco just, whatever the cost was to build the warehouse, they doubled it voluntarily so that the public could have use of all these amazing facilities.
Oh, that's cool.
That is super cool.
Another one is you get special food there. And also in Mexico, they sell the hot dogs. You could put pickled jalapeno peppers on them from a dispenser. It's unlimited numbers of them. They're really good.
Do you have any Costco secrets? I'm sorry, Mark.
I read the book. Let me ask the questions.
Secret. I want the secret.
All of a sudden, Kim's quiet for the whole show, Tony.
I have a pair of Costco experts here, and I need them.
Even get a word.
Now.
She says nothing for every show. She just sits there.
Why are you yelling?
And all of a sudden, I can't shut her off.
Kim, how are you?
I'm sorry, Schwartz, that you had to even hear that.
Right. Well, yes, Mark, you'll like the answer. We do have a secret, and we're not telling you. And the answer is, what's secret about the pumpkin pie? We stumbled on something, and I'm special. And in part of our touring around and being escorted by Costco employees, and so we wrote to the CEO and said, we found this thing out. We're guessing you don't want us to talk about it. And he said, let's just keep it between us. So it's going to the grave.
Oh,
okay.
But there are some secrets in the book, and I'm just kind of going from memory. But when I went, oh, that's cool. Like, I was curious where all the Kirkland products are made. And you answer that in your book, I believe. Isn't that right?
Well, they're made all over the place, and some of them are co-produced with, brand names that you would know. But, for one reason or another, the producer doesn't care or want to be identified alongside Costco. There are cases where, they are co-produced and people can see it, like Jelly Belly and Kirkland Signature have this vast jar of jelly beans. But they co-produce a lot with major manufacturers. The wines, for example, may be Kirkland signature wines may come from some of the most famous vineyards in the world. It may be just excess that they don't the vineyard itself doesn't want to bottle for whatever reason.
They do. So they essentially white label a lot of their stuff, or that's how some of the costs are so low because it's extra product to some of these high end producers.
That's true. That's true with some of this. Of course, Kirkland signature hot dogs are all made by Costco at facilities in California and in Illinois.
John wants to know, when is the best time to go to get the most samples? Is there a secret there?
Well, if you're brave, I would say Saturday afternoon, but it's also pretty crowded. It can be crowded. They're there every day of the week. But my personal theory, backed up by nothing, is that the weekends are more popular for samples.
Huge in Japan says Kirkland bourbon rocks. Okay.
Starbucks does make some Kirkland coffee, but it doesn't make all Kirkland coffee. Some of the coffees, and we go into this in the book.
There's a whole chapter on coffee.
Are imported directly to Costco and are roasted in a facility in New Jersey.
Which smells great.
So that's absolutely right. Some of the coffee is Starbucks, but some of it is not.
These two people who love Costco so much, they've done this great book with all of these secrets. And some of the secrets are just facts that are not necessarily love letter-ish. For example, as I recall in this Joy of Costco, you note that Costco, while very successful in all the ways that you've just detailed, internationally, et cetera, and certainly here in America, has not quite hit everywhere. Like it doesn't land in every community with ultimate success. That's kind of what I recall from your book?
Yeah, they started out in the Midwest in the 1980s, and it was very hard to penetrate. And they pulled back, and they were very upset about it. They closed, I think, 3 warehouses in Milwaukee and Minneapolis, and they paid off all of their vendors, and they offered employees relocation to any other Costco location that was open. But they came back with a storm. In 1998, they opened 5 Costcos in one day in Detroit, and they've been going strong in the Midwest ever since. They're also a little less prevalent in the South because Walmart has had such a long head start in that part of the world. But they are in every state in the South. So but just not as strong as they are. For example, California, I think, has most warehouses of any state in the country. And the East Coast also has a lot of warehouses.
Why do we associate going to Costco with buying, huge volumes of things to get the discount as opposed to, just the small amount that you might find in a regular grocery store?
That's a myth, I think. I mean, we live in a 450 square foot apartment, which, is part of the uniqueness of this story, I guess.
You're seeing all of it behind us here.
They live in Manhattan in this 450 foot apartment. I know this from, reading your about you. And but you had this wanderlust for Costco. But you're saying you fit all your Costco products in that 450 foot space, no problem?
Well, two problems. One is we ship home a lot of stuff because we find something special, we ship it home. So right now it looks a little bit like a Costco hoarders episode, but we do have a small storage unit. But I'll say that right now there's a kind of mayonnaise I'm getting at Costco. It's in a perfectly normal sized jar. It's not a 500-gallon tub. It's an avocado oil mayonnaise. It's a delicious product. It's just regular, and it's a great price. Or you can get 2 slightly larger jars of Grey Poupon mustard. Yes, I do have a 500 pack of a leftover 500 pack of Q-tips that my parents gave me when I was in college. I'm still working through that. Another part of the story that's really, if you thought we weren't crazy already, we decided to self-publish this. So we are eternally grateful to the 22 publishers who turned us down because Costco wouldn't guarantee they'd sell the book. And we published it ourselves. The name of our company, wait for it, Hot Dog Press. And our first print run was not shy. We printed 100,000 of these books. The reason why was because that was the lowest price per unit we could get to, and also the exact amount of money we were willing to totally lose.
Hopefully not. Hopefully not.
But
well, now, will Costco, has Costco maintained their position that they're not going to sell the book, or might they?
They're selling the book.
They are selling. Okay, I missed it in that little run. Okay.
We found that out about 3 days after we finished manufacturing the books. They're selling
That's
it.
terrific. Congratulations. It really is a love letter to them. I don't understand why they want.
They're modest.
From the chat, what's the most popular item Costco sells from Liz?
Bath tissue.
Bath tissue is probably in most warehouses the most popular.
In some locations, it's American vodka, Kirkland's signature brand.
Yeah. We used to have, Kim, I don't know if you remember this, but in the early days on KGO, we used to have a Costco correspondent. She worked in Costco.
No.
And she used to report to us regularly. She sent me these long emails, very detailed emails about what was going on at Costco. And the reason it became particularly relevant was when COVID hit, everybody was descending on COVID for what you were talking about. That's what made me think of it, the toilet tissues and other stuff.
Right.
And then she started telling me, there was a big run on paper towels today, and all the hand sanitizer has been sold out for weeks now. And then she said, and this is the saddest thing, she said, that the free samples were discontinued during COVID.
Oh, yeah.
But then it all came back, and now life has been, breathed back into that environment. But the idea somehow that Costco is a warehouse that you can buy a bunch of stuff, I think that's morphed into it just being sort of a living and breathing Amazon.com. You can get anything there, and you can get it at a lower price. And you mentioned in the book, that's sort of one of the directives that they set out, that they had almost a mission directive, didn't they?
Yeah, it's very different from Amazon in one way. Amazon will literally sell anything. Costco, as David said, is very, very strict and disciplined, very highly curated. They sell only 3,800 items, which is one of the reasons we were so delighted they were willing to sell our book. And the pricing is at most only 14% above cost. So that's just really unique. And back to COVID for a second, Costco does the right thing when no one's looking. And one of the things they did is a great example of this is during COVID, people my age or older, or anybody who had an underlying health condition got full pay to stay home. People who did go to work got time and a half. And I can tell you there are a lot of other companies that don't do that.
Really generous.
Yeah, but they're not, they say they're not altruistic about it. It's just good business. And the turnover rate reflects this. The employees are treated incredibly well and they stay. If you make it at Costco for a year, not that's hard to do, but if you last a year, the turnover rate is less than 9%.
Wow.
It's
extraordinary. Extraordinary.
I know it's supposed to be a discounted warehouse. You get things for cheaper, but I can't get out of that place for under $200. And I'm wondering what's the most, as you've traveled around to all these Costco's, what's your highest receipt? What's the most you've ever spent when you walked out of a Costco?
Oh gosh. Well, I can tell you one thing that was insane that we ended up buying. Susan is incredibly indulgent to me. We're walking around the Taiwan warehouse, and Susan wanders off, and I'm standing there with the cart in the liquor department. And there's a 1.75 liter bottle of Glenmorangie Scotch, really good Scotch, for $55. It's basically half price for a Gigundo bottle of this stuff.
It'll last you a while.
We put it in the cart and schlepped it home.
No, excuse me, we did not put it in the cart. I returned a few minutes later. I looked in the cart and said, "Wow, we travel with carry-on luggage. What do you plan to do with that?" We did once we bought a really large suitcase, and then once we did that, we were off to the races. We filled it with all kinds of Taiwanese snacks and lots of fun stuff, and we took it as we checked it on. So
of course, that's the fun of it, right? You've got to bring it back.
Well, is that the most expensive thing? Biggest thing we bought?
The most expensive thing I've ever gotten are my hearing aids, which I'm delighted to tell you. Anybody can get a free hearing test at Costco. You don't have to be a member. You just need to make an appointment. I can now eavesdrop in another state. It's just fantastic. And they were $1,500.
Well, you talk about that in the book, the fact that hearing aids are, by whatever metric they measure, some of the best hearing aids and hearing aid programs are there at Costco. And I'll tell you this last thing, not to make this, not to pile onto the love letter, but just this past week, I was sitting in a poker game next to this guy, and he starts talking to me, and he runs the fourth biggest lens maker factories in the world. There are 4 of them apparently, and he runs the 4th biggest. And I said, well, what's the best place to get glasses? Just a price. It's also crazy with Luxottica essentially having a monopoly on the market. He said, if you really want to know, probably the best place to get eyeglasses, good quality work, and it's not expensive, is Costco.
Yep.
So
there you go.
There you are. You're, your legend is part of the growing legend of Costco, and you lay it all out in the book, and it's really fun. There's just a lot of facts and factoids, and the book is The Joy of Costco. It's a great run, a treasure hunt from A to Z, and you do kind of break it out that way. It's funny how much, and in our last minute, has really informed our life. I feel like many of us have spent many an hour in Costco. Mm-hmm. I think all of the television sets in my house come from Costco. And they have this vibrant electronics section as well, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. It's the first thing you see when you come in. They call it the majors section because it's major appliances and electronics. And it's there, it's there up front because, it's just such a dazzling way to enter the store. Everything's in color. It's all flashing, and all the videos are going on. And it's really fun to come in that way. We all of our computers come from Costco.
All of everything except for David came from Costco. But the point is, it's a decent company. They do the right thing, and the more we learned about them, the happier we felt. And they do all this, and they make money. They don't make as much as they could. So the hot dog, they could charge more for that than they do. It's a great story. It takes some discipline, but to me, it's a feel-good story about what you can do as a decent company.
It is. The Joy of Costco, a treasure hunt from A to Z. David and Susan Schwartz, congratulations. Thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I loved it. I really did. It was a great best of show. Just a few things, but they, my God, they occupy the entire show. I love that Costco couple. My God, that's a great life. We found so many more great segments that we can't wait to share with you at some point, I guess, along the way when we have another holiday. But that was really fun.
Yeah.
So, thanks for smashing the like button and for being here and for showing us all the love.
Smashed it with your iron rod.
Yikes, that's a little loud.
Smash it hard.
Showing us all the love.
Aggressively smash it.
Aggressively smashing.
Mm-hmm.
Kim is off the next couple of days, too.
Yeah.
So the after party will not have... It won't be the after party live, but it is fresh content, I'm told.
Fresh content.
So, yeah.
Pre-recorded, but fresh.
We'll do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
We won't do it live, but that's it. Anyway, guys.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Tomorrow, Pulitzer Prize winner David K. Johnston on Trump and more.
Bye-bye.
Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.